Hi, my name is Liana Gerdoff. I'm a holistic psychologist and hypnotherapist at Love's Wellness Center. Today, I have a very special invitation for you. If you feel called to dive into true soul work of grief and loss in a gentle, communal, ceremonial way. To me, grief work has always been soul work. It's always been this holy ground, this centering. It's not something clinical to fix, to run from, to avoid. And it by no means indicates that we are broken or that we feel too much or that we're too sensitive. It's also not something to compare. One's grief is not bigger or heavier than another. And we all have experienced different layers, different petals of grief. And so, who are these communal ceremonies for? So there's so many different petals of grief, different layers. And at the core, the one that we in our society resonate with more deeply, perhaps, is losing a loved one. So losing family members, losing friends, losing colleagues. Those have physically departed. It also, at the core, is this living grief that we experience. So loved ones that we're no longer associated with. So this might look like a divorce or a loss of a friendship that meant a lot to us. And so these people are very much alive, but they're no longer in our lives. Also, our pets, our beloved soul-filling companions that guide us, that support us in life, that are there for the deepest soul moments. It also holds space for pregnancy loss. So the little souls that didn't make it earthside. And then other layers of grief come up as well, right? So grief of unfulfilled desires and situations, expectations, trajectories of life that fall through the cracks, perhaps unveiling a different path for us, but maybe not one that we thought of or wanted for ourselves. Another petal is grief of illness and chronic pain that creates a complete shift in our being, in our identity, in our interaction with others. We also hold grief for exiled, shamed, dismissed parts of us that we don't want to see, the parts filled with regret or shame or guilt, the parts that we just want to run away from and avoid, but they keep knocking on our door. We also hold grief for this disconnect that we have in our society in the Western world, the disconnect with nature, the oneness of the planet, the soul of the planet, heartbeat of Earth, and everything that is on it. We forget how intertwined and woven we are with the planet. And when it weeps, we weep. We feel it in our bones. We feel it in our body. We feel this collective grief, this collective layer of the state of the world, our collective struggles and pain, the cries of the earth, the unknown and uncertainty of the future. And there's also layers of ancestral grief and transgenerational trauma that maybe didn't originate with us, but we are the keepers at this moment. We are here doing the work at this moment. And so there's this trickle down effects that feels even bigger because there's so many layers in between. And what is true is that we all experience grief, and it's something perpetual, it's something cyclical, it's something annual. We live within cycles of birth, death, rebirth on a daily basis, even when we don't pause to notice it. And when grief arrives, we enter this unfamiliar land. We are entering the underworld. Sometimes it feels like a descent, or that we're in the belly of the underworld, answering a call of rough initiations in order to let it guide us to profound healing and transformation on the other end. And we enter this world, we enter this work by slowing down to work with grief, to invite it. And we recognize that there's this humility. This act of slowing down is humility, because when we enter grief and the territory of it, we oftentimes don't know what to do or what to say. We're entering the unknown. We're entering the total darkness. So grief is truly the work of the soul to experience, to invite grief and loss for tea, to grow from it. And we experience grief, all of us do, knowing that we experience it, we really understand how deeply, if we experience the deep sorrow and the deep pain and deep suffering of it, we can also understand how deep our joy and love and happiness and connection is at times as well. So grief really reminds us that we are alive and that we've come here for the full experience. And certainly grief has this tendency to bring us down at times. Grief comes from the word gravis, which means heavy. And when grief comes, when grief knocks, it certainly is filled with this aura, this sensation of heaviness. We can feel vulnerable, we can feel down, we can feel weakened. In a success-oriented, ascension-driven culture, this might be shamed. We might feel bad for grief, for grieving, for sensing into the loss, for having emotions around it. We might also be filled with failure when we experience grief, because in our individualistic culture, we need to be the hero or the heroine. We can't ask for help. We can't show vulnerability. We can't cry in public. We have to rise above it all and rise quickly so that we can get back to our culture of go, go, go. But in our hearts and our souls, when grief comes, we often feel this emptiness, this loneliness, and we often feel shame and guilt and blame for feeling this. Paul Shepard reminds us that what we attribute to a failure in our personality is a feeling of emptiness where beautiful and strange otherness should have been. We often forget our place amongst the cosmos, our place amongst the collective. We feel like when we're in grief, we're stuck on this island that we can only get ourselves out of, that we have to get out of. But it often feels like only we can carry and understand our grief. We've exchanged this cosmology of connection for an ideology of separatism. And we forget that grief is truly a collective experience. The sorrows we feel are completely entangled with the sorrows of the world, the sorrows we are all experiencing. So remembering that the opposite of emptiness is not fullness, but embeddedness, embodiment, entanglement, remembering, finding our way back to membership in society. And so together, we must recognize the skillful nature of working with grief, that we can expand our capacity to stretch and hold space for the moments of happiness and joy, even if they're punctuated with moments of sorrow and sadness and grief and loss. So grief is not something we endure or get through. Grief asks us to engage it, to hold a space for it, to dance with it, to cry and weep with it, to talk about it, to move through it, to bring ritual and ceremony to it, and to slow down its rhythm and let it guide us and show us the way through. This is how we begin to develop depth. We also embrace it through the language of the soul, through gentle, compassionate witnessing with non-judgment, without shame and vulnerability or tears, without fixing or avoiding it, but tending to it, tuning into it, to understand it, to grow from it. We create this sacred container with ritual and ceremony to hold the ground beneath us so that we don't feel like we are free falling, when grief comes in. The language of the soul is also through creative arts, creative expression, the written word that helps us reclaim our voice. Also through the body's wisdom, intuitive movement, intuitive flow, the tuning into the vibration of music and sound. And through self-compassion, to breathe into the crevices of the heart, to contract when needed, to go inward, and to expand, to go to community, to have that container held for us. And the soul food of song, the warm and medicinal spices and herbs of teas, finding our way perhaps through a poem or a myth or a story or a fairy tale or a share. So I extend this invitation to you, to all of us really, to sit together in a circle, to hold one palm open for the sorrow, the sadness, the pain, the suffering, and another palm open for the joy, the happiness, the liveliness. The true expression of the soul is to have all of these experiences together. And to learn from the language of the soul, to move through it slowly and rhythmically, and to slow the world down for a bit into a sweet and gentle surrender. These grief ceremonies are very different from therapeutic groups. There's no structure, there's a flow, there's a ritual, there's an invitation. Everything is an invitation, really. But these ceremonies will be held monthly. You are welcome to come to all of them, and each one takes on a life of its own, unfolds in its mysteries. So I invite you to our ceremonial space. I'm here to answer any questions. I'm here to connect, and I look forward to seeing you soon. Thank you. Thank you.